Hi everyone, I'm here talking the psychological horror film Dollhouse with the writer, director and co-producer Stephen M. Smith. Stephen, welcome.
Welcome, thank you.
Thanks for coming. I know you're quite a regular contributor to the Romford Film Festival.
Well, we've had a couple of things here. Yeah, I've worked with Spencer, funny enough, on a film in this location a few years ago.
Okay, great.
But yeah, it's lovely to have my film selected because you have such a high level, so it's really good.
Great. Tell us about Dollhouse. What's the premise?
So Dollhouse is about a young girl who is, brought into a care home. The care home has some kind of weird traits about it, in the fact that the woman who runs the care home is a mute, but only psychologically a mute.
Mm-hmm.
She's had something traumatic happen to her, and the young girl that's brought in has a little doll and a dollhouse, and she's again a mute.
Mm-hmm.
So weird things start to happen, and we end up with kind of all-out madness.
Yes.
Lots of grisly murders and
Definitely some grisly murders.
and some and some madness in the fact we have the lovely Toya and Mark Wingett in it, which was great.
Yeah.
And it was good fun. I think it was good fun to make atmospheric on a shoestring budget, shot in no time at all. So it was really good. It's really good to see it on the big screen, which I was really pleased about.
Yeah. We'll come back to the actors in a minute. Where did you find the inspiration for this story?
Well, I'm kind of the sort of person that meets people and then thinks about characters, and then sometimes I put those characters into scenarios. So for me, it was more about, well, what would it be like if you had two leads who couldn't talk, and then the horror came out of that. And then I have deals where I've made other doll films, Doll Cemetery and,
Understand that, yep.
and Doll Master, and they wanted another doll film. So I thought, well, I'd go back to the old Hammer horror style because we have no money, and create more atmosphere with it. And I'm one of these people who can come up with a story just like that off the top of my head. I've always had that ability. So the inspiration really was you have a premise, a very simple premise, and usually the simplest idea is usually the best idea. And you should always, to any new filmmakers or new writers, that's a really good tip. Because sometimes the simplest idea is what the feeling is going to be when someone's in the cinema watching your movie. That's the first thing that pops into their head. So you just have to then adapt it. And it's about the script, and it's about everything else, all the other elements coming together after that.
And there's something about dolls which I think everyone finds sinister and creepy. I'm not quite sure what it is. Is it the dead eyes? I think it might be the dead eyes. It's the expressionless face, and
I think it's the expressionless face. I think it's also the fact that now we've created almost a subgenre of horror films about killer dolls, and therefore you have that kind of same as killer clowns and so on. So horror when I was younger was horror. Nowadays it's either doll horror or killer horror or gore or supernatural.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a supernatural drama stroke horror.
So talking about when you were younger, what are some of your influences for your work?
Okay,
especially in the horror stuff.
So I mean, when I was very young, the first real horror film that I saw, I would say as a horror, was Jaws, because the way that the suspense built up and the way Spielberg managed to keep the thing together. Nowadays, a film like that would never get made, and I'd watch that over and over, and also Halloween, John Carpenter's films.
Two of my favourites.
Yeah, so John Carpenter had no money, and again, I know he made it for around $300,000, which is still crazy money for me today, for us, but it's considered a micro-budget movie at the time. Yeah. It has the rawness about it, but I could do something, I could make something, and I think that as a child, I've always had lots of stories in my head about different things. I was writing as young as 10 stories, making my own movies on 8mm 4-minute cartridges and splicing them together. So those are my influences, is Spielberg, and then I saw Poltergeist, which was another great film, which I loved, which I think Spielberg more or less directed himself.
That is the rumour.
Even though Toby Hooper's gone on to do other things which are amazing as well, and have done Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think the thing is, for me, it's as a kind of a bit of a there's certain movies. I mean, Hitchcock, any Hitchcock movie, I could watch.
I could talk to you all day about Hitchcock.
Yeah. So Hitchcock is somebody who. There are elements of Hitchcock where he's kind of he's saying it's script, but in fact, it's also about how he manipulates everybody involved to get what he needs.
Yep.
He could sit on his chair all day and get that on the screen.
Yep.
Other directors are up and moving around and doing stuff, but he's always been like that. Even if you go back to the films he shot in the 20s and 30s, he's sitting at his chair, he's controlling everything in the room.
He was an avid storyboarder.
Yeah.
He said he actually found the making of films on the day actually boring because he'd already done it in his head. He'd storyboard everything either in his head or physically.
Well, Spielberg does a bit of both. I do a bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes you need to storyboard a sequence. It could just be a simple stickman. You don't have to go out. This is to new filmmakers. You don't have to go out and do a complete visual mood board. You could just create in your head, as long as you know and the DP knows and the actors know what's going on in those pictures and those shots, you can do your coverage, your blockage. And other times, I love to go into a room and say, well, let's see what the actors can do. Let's rehearse this as a play. Let's get your, it's a 3-minute scene. Let's rehearse it. Let's get your positions. Let's give you freedom. Then go, well, where are we going to have the cameras? Okay, we can have a master, nice wide shot. But we could do a single, we could do a 2-shot, we could follow you here, you could go there, we could have the camera above. And I think Hitchcock did do that sometimes, where, for example, there's a famous shot where he's looking above, and I think, well, actually, he probably never planned that. He probably thought, well, actually, I could get up there because we're in the studio, I could get the camera up there and I could stick it down.
Yeah.
And it's never been done before. And Rope, amazing film.
Yep.
Right? One of my favourite films because it is enclosed space and it's all about the characters and it's all about the what might happen. One's terrified of what might happen and the other one doesn't care. And I'm fascinated by that.
Okay, so you make quite a few films. You're a regular filmmaker. How do you keep things fresh?
Well, sometimes distribution is the key. I've got 20 movies on the go at the moment. I'm involved in between 6 and 10 films a year.
Right. Yeah.
I think the thing is there any freshness to anything? You could take a story that's been used before, and nowadays they're remaking everything. I think to keep it as fresh as possible is, if you look at my 3 Doll films, the Doll Master, Doll Cemetery, and Doll House, they're all completely different. Even in the way they're shot. So I think the freshness is really about finding a core storyline that is very simple, very easy, but then taking real characters and real people you meet and creating characters that are associated with, so an audience can kind of interact with those characters. That's how you keep it fresh, and then also just by maybe potentially having different people working with you, different actors, different DP, that kind of thing.
So on to the acting. So Toya Wilcox, 80s pop legend.
Yes, she's brilliant.
How did you cast her in the film as the psychic? How did you reach out to her?
Okay, so I've known a few people who know her for a long time.
Right.
And I'm involved in a project at the moment which was a bit like Quadrophenia.
Okay.
So I kind of have a mod script that we've been developing for a while.
Right.
And I know Mark Wingett.
Mark Wingett, yeah.
And then Mark knows, because he was in Quadrophenia with Toya.
Okay, right.
So I know all of those people, Ray and everybody.
Right.
But it's my films have never really been at that level where I've wanted to get people involved. I wanted to wait until I was at a proper level. But Toya's in a spiritualist. She's into all that. So that's a perfect role for her.
Right, okay.
And I've just done another movie where she plays a real-life spiritualist.
Okay.
Which is set in the 1930s.
Okay.
Which we've just literally finished shooting.
What's the name of that film?
So it's called The Ghosts of Borley Rectory.
Okay.
And it has Colin Baker, who was Doctor Who.
Okay, yes.
It has Chris Ellison, who was Burnside in the Bill.
Right.
And it has Julian Sands, who was Room with a View, Warlock,
Yeah.
another famous horror character.
Yeah.
Naked Lunch, David Cronenberg, who's worked with everyone. Arachnophobia, another horror film.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to. I was standing next to someone on set on that film who actually had Steven Spielberg's phone number on his. And I'm thinking, please ring Steven Spielberg.
So arrange this immediately.
Yeah.
What was your biggest challenge making Dollhouse?
I think the biggest challenge was obviously you're working with children and young teenagers and the newness of them. In a confined house that somebody actually does live in was quite restrictive, so we had a little bit of a longer shoot, but it also had the benefits because you could then go on to shoot whenever you needed to sometimes. But other than that, no, it's great having Louisa. Louisa's a very experienced producer. She's worked on 25 films.
Right.
And it was good in the fact that I think the challenges were mainly weather and things like that,
Yeah.
But burning doll houses down isn't a great thing to do if you've got a micro budget.
No, you've only got so many chances at that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How do you raise the funds for your films? How are you self-funded, or are you?
I have a team of investors who kind of come into all my movies.
Okay.
And that's basically how it works. So I invest some of my own money into them.
Yeah.
There are people that we have a team. We have a team of kind of backers that come in as crowdfunding.
Yeah.
But they regularly back each other's films.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So that's really how we do that.
Okay. What advice would you give? We briefly touched on it earlier, but maybe we could expand a little bit. For people who are trying to make it their first film, maybe, or have got an idea which they love, but they're just trying to get to that next stage.
Okay. So my advice, anybody who wants to go and make a movie, is that you can make a movie. Anybody can make a movie today. When I was younger, you had to buy cartridges, you had film, and it would take forever to go and get processed and everything else. Nowadays, you can record stuff on your phone. This is my advice. My advice is, think to yourself, you have a zero budget. All you have is a sandwich and a drink every day, and that's your budget, right? What can you do? What can you film? Go out with your phone and film it first with your phone and see whether it looks good and how you work out, framing, how you work out depth of field, all those things can be done on a phone. You don't need expensive equipment. You don't need lots and lots of money to make a movie. What you need is the energy and the passion. And you need maybe one person with you that is going to push you when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you want to give up.
Yeah.
But there's nothing to stop. Go and make a short film, tell a story within that which has a beginning, a middle and an end. And if you've got that, you can expand it. You can expand that story, because any short story could be turned into a feature. It's like a soap. How do they continue it? They continue it by having good writers who know how to get a hook. They hook you. So as an experienced producer, director, my advice is to go and shoot anything that costs you no money. Don't mortgage your house, don't do anything silly like that.
Right.
So that you can then go, I've either come up with some masterpiece and I now know I can make movies. I'll go away and show my little clip to someone, and maybe an aunt or an uncle might say, well, I'll give you a few £100 to go and feed everybody and stuff like that. That's the way to do it, because there are other filmmakers out there who have gone out, remortgaged their houses, and then they can't, that is just the worst thing you could do.
Yeah. So start small but convicted.
Start by just teaching yourself.
Start by doing.
Teaching yourself. It's self-taught, taught in how backlight works, how fill light works, how the camera works. Knowledge yourself. I know all aspects of filmmaking, but I don't know them 100%. I know them 75%. Right. Because so I know where the lights should be. I know where the sound should be. I know where the microphone should be, and I know where the camera should be. But you still need, if you have a knowledge of all those things, what you then do is find someone who will do it for you, who can potentially give you ideas. Like we were saying this earlier on in here, you could light this differently, and it would feel like a different movie or a different type of interview. just by moving one light. And that's the same. If you're out making something, your canvas is the world. And therefore, you could go, oh, this would be a great place to shoot. Well, then go shoot there. Don't shoot against a flat wall. Never do that. That's one rule. But you will learn that as you're making films. So yeah, that's. I mean, I think nowadays people are very lucky because it's so instant. Everything you can type on a write your script, and if you don't like it, you can just write it off. When I was younger, you'd be a typewriter. Yeah. And if you made a mistake, you had to rip it up and start again.
Yeah, the resources are unlimited.
Yes, they are. They are unlimited. And the brain is unlimited. We only ever use, at any one time, about 19% of our brain. Right. Einstein used 26% of his brain. Something like that.
We need the secret.
Right? So what happens if we use 100% of our brain? Yeah. Now there's a film in there, but I've just come up with the idea, so... Okay. Copyright Stephen M. Smith.
Final question. How has the current crisis affected you, or may it affect your future films?
I think it's affecting in two ways. Distribution-wise, there's just no content. So all the film companies, all the distributors are pushing everything to 2021. Yeah. And then they're going to be inundated in 2021. The whole DVD, Blu-ray thing is going to be virtually dead in 5 years' time, as far as I'm aware. But actually, making movies, we're getting back to it. I mean, it's costing more money. I think the Jurassic World film was costing another $5 million. We've just literally shot a movie. We found it was pretty easy to do because we just had to abide by everyone making sure that they were washing their hands. We had hand pumps. We had someone catering. But you need space. So, and it also has limitations like the crowd scene that was in one of my films that was shown here. You can't do that. So it's what is the content going to be like if this carries on? What are we going to see? Are we going to see no sex scenes, no kissing, no fights, no action?
All that close contact stuff.
Yeah. How do you do a fight in a pub when you've got screens everywhere now and you're like social distancing signs everywhere? Yeah. So we've actually shot a movie in lockdown. Right. So we've actually done two movies. One was actually we got everybody to film in their own houses with their own cameras. Okay. Individual kind of little horror film stories as far away as New Zealand and America. And then once everyone was back properly, we went down to Devon and shot this big movie. But we found that the accommodation was 3 times more expensive than it was prior to COVID. So we probably spent, another 20% of our budget on PPE and hotel because we have to put everyone in their own room. Yeah. Whereas previously we would have had an Airbnb and potentially a lot of the crew would have shared. They would have had their own rooms. It would have been a lot cheaper because you're at a house for 2 weeks.
We look forward to seeing those new projects.
Cool.
Whenever they do come out.
Yep.
Hopefully soon. Stephen, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing to show my film at the Romford Film Festival, which is amazing.